Sentado, Anita y tú.
Me and the Fractal Mood have a complicated relationship. This compact, vertical air purifier Sonos speaker thing is, in my opinion, an absolute beauty. It's gorgeous and packed full of potential, but it's imbalanced. It's too much about form over function, and even though I really like this case, and I like it so much, I want to love it, that's what frustrates me about the Fractal Mood. It's that it's so close to greatness. But to really get my point, we have to start the Here's the part list if you want to see it. The simple stuff is straightforward: CPU and motherboard, RAM, SSD, all that. A single unit goes into the case and is screwed down. After that, you install the power supply and you connect all the cables, upon which I would recommend installing the cooler for the CPU. Now, you can install a tower air cooler in this case, but one of the key features it has is that it can support up to 280 millimeters of fans and radiators. So there is a lot of potent CPU cooling options, and I installed the water block first, which was pretty straightforward, followed by installing the two fans and the radiator onto the radiator bracket, sliding it in. It is actually quite a tight fit. Partly because my cable management isn't very good, but also partly because there is a lot of space taken up with cables in this layout. Not particularly efficient, but all in all, it's a pretty straightforward build. After that, it's installing the GPU with the rather tight and short extension cable. That was straightforward enough, partly because the PNY RTX 4070 Super is such a small GPU, and we're done. That's the build process. This case has, frankly, pretty good support for almost anything except its GPU. You can fit a ton of drives, the aforementioned CPU cooling options, and build-wise, it's a straightforward layout that doesn't take too much to understand so long as you have a basic grasp of PC building. And the case is pretty big for ITX. But the main issue with this case, even though it's big, is really the big ITX cases usually indicate solid ITX cooling performance, since small PC but big size means good airflow and good cooling options. That's not exactly the case here, pun intended. Fractal took a page out of the Corsair One, or the Apple trash can here, with exhaust gases being taken care of by a big top fan pulling air out, while your GPU breathes fresh air from the rear and your CPU breathes fresh air from its own fabric front side here. However, while this seems like a sensible layout that is actually tried and tested before, cooling really isn't the best. Your GPU is pressed up against a dense filter with little clearance, assuming you max out what limited space you have in here and don't go with a very small 4070 Super PNY GPU like I did. And your CPU cooler, if you opt for the AIO option, which is one of the key draws of going with this case anyway, is going to be pressed up against this rather dense fabric and a plastic grille that probably isn't ideal for airflow. Plus, not all four sides of this case are ventilated, with the left and the right being solid and closed off, which is not helpful at all in a case that looks like it's kind of choked up in airflow to begin with. Now, this might be to prevent hot air from the two halves mixing and recirculating, or it could also be to prevent hot air from inside the PC leaking out and kind of affecting users sitting beside it if this PC was to be placed on a desk. But surely there was a way to help mitigate and reduce these things without reducing what seems like a really rather limited airflow. And because the GPU clearance isn't great too, as I've mentioned earlier, you can't really fit bigger cards in here with big, more powerful and potent coolers, which limits how powerful your PC can be straight up. And if you did max out the clearance, that GPU will also be pressed up against the sides, just like the CPU cooler AIO fans would be, which is going to cause issues with the acoustic. Because of this thick fabric that chokes out the fans have to run harder for more static pressure to help get enough air to cool your PC for your CPU cooler and possibly your GPU cooler. This means a powerful PC in here is unlikely to be very quiet. Also, with GPU pressed up against the rear grille and CPU coolers pressed up against the front grille, you might have some resonant frequencies causing some humming depending on what fans, what RPMs, and what setup you're actually running. I thankfully didn't face this, but this was something mentioned by Gamers Nexus and Hardware Canucks. And the thing is, for a PC that looks this good, designed the way it is, clearly sit on your desk, I mean, the ports are at the bottom front of the case, it does hold this PC back quite a bit from being as great as it could be. The issue with this case is really its lack of balance, its lack of moderation. ITX cases are the ultimate challenge in case design in balancing trade-offs. And what makes a good ITX case is how they balance all the needs of form and function with less resources, namely space, being massively scarce. But it over-provisions CPU cooling massively, meaning your CPU is cool as heck, especially if you run a big AIO, but your GPU is left with little room to breathe and low compatibility on top of that, especially with GPUs getting bigger and bigger nowadays. However, Fractal did kinda luck out with the 50 series, with the 5090 Founders Edition being just a 2-slot super compact card, so it can actually fit in this. But I think Fractal just got lucky or had some insider information from someone they knew. But there are also other imbalances. Form over function is prevalent everywhere, with choices like this fabric looking amazing and honestly feeling amazing every time I touch it. I love, but that kind of ethos is its looks and charm over actual cooling performance. And all that leads to one major imbalance, the main imbalance that I mentioned at the start. It's that what this PC case is capable of is nothing compared to its potential. This thing is a beauty, and it fits this world of IKEA-dominated furniture, which makes sense because they're Swedish. It's clean but warm and cozy with kind of analog aesthetics that I just adore so well. It's a nice warm rug in a field of cold, metallic and soulless PC cases, and feels like a nice piece of furniture that just feels homely as opposed to a minimalist house. And the idea of its layout is one that we know can work, meaning it's really close to greatness with a couple of fixes. All Fractal, in my opinion, has to do is to allow more flexibility in partitioning the CPU and GPU cooling, possibly with a spine like the Fractal Terras, or with some flexibility in fan mounting, and also change the dense cashmere wool-like fabrics to something thinner and lighter while still retaining a beautiful look like this. Hopefully they can do that, maybe they can't. But with just those two simple changes, I think this case goes from good to great. I mean, everywhere else in this case, it's good. The build quality is more than satisfying enough. Yeah, these parts are plastic, but they look good and they are pulled off tastefully. The front I/O is good, building is easy, accessories are pretty decent, and everything kind of just works, with the only real issue in terms of design oversight on top of cooling being the fact that you can't use standard antenna on the back of your motherboard because the I/O faces down. So you need an antenna that kind of like extends out via cables. Beyond that, can I recommend it? And should you buy it? For style points, absolutely. If you're not someone who's looking to build a crazy high-end rig with a 4080, 4090, 5090, and you're okay with cooler mid-range parts like a 4070, 4070 Super kind of range of GPUs, and you're okay with slightly higher temps or slightly more fan noise from your CPU cooling side, I mean, if you get something like a 7800 or 9800 X3Ds, those CPUs are very cool anyway, then this case would do you well. But for me, as a gamer who wants a beastly graphics card and just wants to game, it's a little bit more of a tough sell, since having a big powerful GPU with great cooling and not too much acoustics so I can hear footsteps is absolutely top priority for me. But then again, I daily drive a Fractal Terra, and that case has some of the similar issues to this case as well in terms of cooling and noise. So maybe I am just a sucker for looks and you have me dead to rights. And with that, thank you guys so much for watching. Big credit to who I copied the idea for the intro from, which is the guy who made Arcane and the Dangers of Snow Bunny Mind Control, which is an absolutely insane title, but a really good video with excellent editing. I'm gonna link it down below so you can watch it and get inspired as well.